In today's episode, I'm going to be telling you all about the brand new Agency Accelerator podcast and outlining some of the exciting content I've got planned for you over the next few months. So if you're an agency owner, a freelancer, or someone who would love to start their own agency, then this podcast is going to be a must on your playlist.
Accelerate your agency's profitable growth with tools, tips, and value-added interviews with your host, agency owner and coach, Rob Da Costa.
Welcome to the Agency Accelerator podcast. My name's Rob Da Costa. I'm an agency owner and coach, and I am super excited to finally get this podcast going. It's been a long time in the making. I thought about doing it many times before, but just thought I need to have the space and the time to do it properly. Lots of people have told me I should be doing this podcast because I have lots of things to share with you guys, my audience, who will be an agency owner or someone who wants to start their own agency or someone that's freelancing and wants to grow their agency. So in this introductory episode, let me first of all tell you a little bit about myself. So I started my career as a computer programmer and I quickly learned that I wasn't very good at that. So fortunately managed to move into a marketing role, worked my way up to become a marketing manager for a software company. And back in the early 90s, in my arrogant youth, thought that we couldn't find a good PR agency that understood the complexities of the software that we sold. So I rather arrogantly left and started my own agency, CIT PR. Now, over 11 years, that agency grew to 25 staff. We turned over about £1.5 million. We focused on the tech sector, but we broadened out from covering all aspects of tech. And we also broadened out from being just a pure PR company to being a full service marketing agency. Now, back in those days, that meant design, print, newsletter, printed magazines, logos, graphics, and all the rest of it. We're talking about the early days of the internet at this point, which really ages me. So we grew that business kind of, like a lot of us do, stumbled along, didn't know much. So we did things, they worked, they failed. We bashed our head against a brick wall. We had some great luck, all the things that no doubt you're going through. And in those days, there wasn't much support around. The idea of coaching wasn't well known. And so we just plodded along. And it got to the point in 2003 where I was just fed up with running the agency. So we decided that we were going to sell the business and put it on the market and did the things that you do to maximize the value of your agency, which is a topic that I'll be talking about in a future episode. And eventually we had, just like waiting for a bus, we had two buyers come along, which was great because we were able to play one off against the other. One was a better fit in terms of what they did and what we did, and the second one was a better fit in terms of its location because it was just around the corner. So we ended up selling to them, and I did my 2-year prison sentence or 2-year earn-out. And anyone that's been through that experience will know why I call it a prison sentence. But I did a 2-year earn-out, and at the end of that 2-year period, they offered to sell me back the agency for £1. But by that point, there wasn't much of it left because we'd just been swallowed up into this larger company. Our purchaser was a US company of about 2,000 people with a UK office of about 130. And they really wanted to bolster their marketing skills. So that's why they bought us. And they killed our brand off straight away. And like I say, at the end of 2 years, there wasn't much left of the agency besides the people, and even then half of them had gone. So I thought, nope, it's time to move on with my life. So I left that company, thought, what the hell am I going to do for the rest of my life? And there's a really good moral in that story, which I'll come back to. So I started freelancing for a while, working with some of the bigger agencies in London, and thought, no, this is not what I want to do. Now the universe then kind of conspired, and two separate people told me that I should get into coaching. So this kind of really opened up the sort of inspirational doors for me again, and I went back to do my training. Now, just to put a pause there and reflect back to what I just said, one of the best pieces of advice I give to anybody who is thinking about selling a business or changing their career, or whatever that succession planning looks like, is that you need to have a really clear plan of what you're going to do next before you sell the business, which I didn't have. And as I said, it was a difficult time. I felt quite lost. realised that my self-esteem was largely based on my business success, as it is for so many of us. Anyway, back to the story. I went back and did some training for a couple of years to become a coach. I worked with a coaching company for 2 years where I had some fantastic training, and then thought, no, I want to be self-employed again. I've been self-employed for so long, I want to go out on my own. And that's when I started Da Costa Coaching. And at first I was trying to be a coach to everybody. So in theory, I could go and work with a big corporate one day, and the next day I could go and work with a small agency startup. But the truth of it is, when I went to talk to those big corporates, I didn't have a really compelling story to tell because my background wasn't in the corporate sector. And when I went to talk to those small startups, they'd say, who else do you work with? And I'd mention the big corporate, and they'd think, well, you don't really understand much about me then. So I found it really difficult to win business. And there's a really important moral here, which is when you are a niched player, it becomes much easier to win business. And again, more on that in a future episode. So after a couple of years of sort of stumbling around, just about covering my costs, I decided to niche my business. And it felt like a big decision, but truth be told, it wasn't really that big a decision in hindsight. And that niche for me was going back and working with the agency sector, because that is what I knew really well. That's where my experience was. That's where my passion was. That's where I knew I could make the biggest difference. And trust me, when you work in a space where you are passionate, then you will be successful and money will come to you. And I'm going to be talking more about mindset in January, but I just wanted to say that, when you work in a sector that you really are passionate about, every aspect of that passion shows in terms of the energy you're putting out when you're prospecting, in terms of how you're communicating to prospects and clients, and of course how you deliver that service. So niching is the way to go. So I took that decision to niche my coaching practice, and that's when things really took off. And if we fast forward, 14 years almost since I've been coaching, I love what I do. I work with lots of amazing businesses, some of which are going to come on the podcast. And I feel like I make a difference in the world every single day, which is a great reason to get out of bed. And today, my coaching is delivered face-to-face. I do more and more coaching online as I pick up clients across the world. And one of the most exciting initiatives I launched earlier this year is my Agency Accelerator program, which is a hybrid online and face-to-face coaching program, like a mastermind group. And that's going really well, and I'll tell you more about that in a future episode. So back to the podcast. If you're anything like me, you listen to a number of helpful podcasts in all sorts of different settings, such as driving or walking, or when you're on the train. I do it when I'm walking the dogs, when I'm at the gym. And I have my few favourite podcasts that I listen to week in and week out. And I really hope that the Agency Accelerator podcast will become part of your regular fixture of podcasts that you listen to. Now, the idea of the podcast is to provide you with some super value added content that you can start using in your agency today. I've been working in the agency sector for nearly 30 years, which really ages me. And yes, I do have lots of grey hair. So I've got lots of stories to share with you, the good, the bad and the ugly of how to run an agency, how to grow an agency, how to not run an agency, how to not grow an agency. And I want to share those stories and experiences and ideas and tools with you so that you can hopefully grow in a enjoyable, sustainable way that excites you to get out of bed every day. Now, when I say agency, I mean all types of agencies, not just the new online digital world of agencies, but also those bricks and mortar companies. I mean PR companies, design companies, web development companies, SEO, PPC, content, marketing, and all the gamut. Those are all the people that I work with day in and day out. And I mean everybody from a freelancer who wants to move into growing their business right the way through to the larger SME agencies. So whatever the size of your current agency, I'm sure you're going to find some value in this podcast. The planned format for the podcast will be to release, at least to start with, 2 episodes per month. 1 episode with me sharing you some value-added content and giving you some insights on a particular topic. And then the second episode will be where I interview someone around that particular topic. So the person I'm interviewing could be a fellow agency owner, they could be someone with lots of agency experience, someone who provides services in the agency sector, or someone who just has some really good, valuable opinions and perspectives that they can share with you on the subject that we're talking about that month. So as the year winds down and you reflect on what's gone before and you start planning for the following year, I thought we should focus episode 1 in January on the subject of having a winning mindset. Now, this seems a really appropriate starting point for the year because if you have the right mindset, you're much more likely to grow and you're much more likely to achieve your goals. Yes, of course, I could talk about New Year's resolutions or setting your plan for the year, but you know what, guys, I'm sure there's going to be tons of content around on that subject matter. So I think what's a better topic is to think about how to start the year with the right mindset. And this is not some wishy-washy topic. This is really, really practical, tangible stuff that will make a big difference. I know sometimes I am challenged with having sort of negative thoughts about my business, negative thoughts around an initiative, thinking it may not work. Indeed, I've had some of those thoughts around this podcast, which is probably in part what stopped me launching the podcast up until now. But if we put too much focus and energy on that negative thinking, then we'll stay in our comfort zone and never do anything differently. So the mindset topic is a really important one that affects both me and you. So that's what we're going to be talking about in episode 1. And then the second episode, I'm super excited to be interviewing the client service director, soon to be managing director of Glow, who is a marketing agency that focuses on the education sector. And Sally's going to be talking about some of the shifts that they've made as their industry has changed and what they've done to stay ahead of that curve so that they don't end up shrinking because of the external impacts on their sector. So make sure you come back and join me in January to hear more about that episode. So today I'd love you to do 2 things. First of all, please hit the subscribe button and also share this with your colleagues. And second of all, please let me know some of the content that you would like me to cover. This is all about you guys who are running your agencies. And so I'm really interested to know what you're interested in and making sure that this content is super useful for you. So I am super excited to get this going today and launch it formally in January with our first episodes on mindset and our interviews with Glow. Meantime, I hope you have a fantastic Christmas. I hope you have a break from work and you can forget about work for a few days or even a week so that you come back to it next year with really super focused, positive mindset so that we all have a fantastic year ahead.